Imagine the scene. The most exciting athlete in women's basketball, a player who just a few months ago was sinking deep three-pointers far behind the line over defenders and making brilliant no-look passes that stunned entire stadiums, is now bent over at the center of the court. Both of her hands are resting on her knees, and her face is twisted in a type of agony that has nothing to do with her mental toughness. The arena falls completely silent. It isn't the quiet crowd you hear during a free throw, either. It is a heavy, anxious silence where everyone stops breathing for a second because it is clear that something is seriously wrong. This exact scene did not happen just once or twice this year. It happened 4 separate times. 4 different lower body injuries occurred in less than 2 months. Every single time it happened, the management of the Indiana Fever stood before reporters and gave the exact same repetitive excuse. A routine minor issue that is being managed daily, and she is recovering well. Each time, the basketball community just accepted the answer, moved along, and waited for a follow-up report that never actually arrived. But there is a deeper reality that the public has not been told. What Caitlin Clark is going through right now is not just a medical issue. It is a story about control. Who holds it, who is misusing it, and what gets cast aside when a professional league decides that marketing a star is more critical than protecting her physical health. Because somewhere in the middle of packed arenas, unprecedented television ratings, and non-stop merchandise sales, the Indiana Fever and the WNBA leadership made a quiet, damaging choice. And Caitlin Clark is the person dealing with the consequences. This is the injury crisis they are trying to keep you from understanding, but once you look at it clearly, it becomes impossible to ignore. By the time Clark suffered an injury playing against the Connecticut Sun, people who were closely observing the situation had already noticed a pattern that the team's medical reports were intentionally hiding. This was not a sudden streak of bad luck. It was a chain reaction of physical breakdowns that had been developing since the very first week of the regular season. It began with an issue in her left quadricep, which was labeled as simple tightness that could be resolved with rest and physical therapy before she was cleared for the following game. Next, her left groin was injured. It was the same situation with a slightly altered press release. Soon after, her right groin gave out. Before anyone could truly understand what was happening to her body, the exact same lower body region was aggravated again on the opposite side, caused by a completely different angle of physical stress. Orthopedic doctors who are not employed by the Fever, and who spoke off the record but have enough experience to recognize these patterns from afar, use a specific phrase for this condition: compensatory injury cycling. It is easy to comprehend once it is explained. When one area of the human body gets hurt and is not allowed the proper time to recover completely, the surrounding muscles and tendons start taking on extra stress to shield the damaged spot. They work too hard to balance things out, and that overcompensation eventually causes a brand new breakdown in a completely different part of the body. It is a row of falling dominoes disguised as an unfortunate accident. The left side gets injured, so the right side tries to help. Then the right side gives out, causing the left side to tighten up all over again. The cycle keeps repeating, and the only way to break it is through total, uninterrupted, mandatory rest. Instead, what Clark has received is a strict limit on her playing minutes and constant public assurances. Several medical experts who reviewed public game video and the season timeline, without seeing her private medical files, have pointed out that Clark's injury pattern does not fit a day-to-day timeline at all. It is not even close. A realistic recovery period for this type of multiplying soft tissue damage requires weeks, not days, of healing. Furthermore, that recovery can only happen if the athlete is completely removed from playing in games, placed on a highly organized rehabilitation plan, and protected from the physical exhaustion of regular travel, public appearances, and hard practices. Instead of resting, Clark has been traveling across the country, playing intense minutes, and putting on a brave face for the cameras week after week. The leadership of the Fever definitely understood how severe the situation was. They had to know, as any qualified medical staff would. The issue was never whether they recognized the danger. The issue was how they decided to handle that data. The answer to that question exposes an uncomfortable truth about how this league runs when a once-in-a-generation athlete turns into a massive financial commodity. Even before the regular season officially began, there were already warning signs hidden within Clark's situation. They simply were not obvious yet to the public. People close to her inner training circle reported that Clark arrived at her first professional training camp having put on a lot of muscle over the winter. Her reasoning made perfect sense. The WNBA is an incredibly physical league. Experienced players had made it very clear that the college games Clark used to dominate were entirely different from the pros, where the pace is faster and the physical contact is much more intense. So, she put in the effort to build up her body so she could handle the collisions and keep playing. However, fitness experts understand a concept that casual sports fans often overlook. Putting on a lot of muscle without slowly adjusting how you move can quietly disrupt an athlete's physical mechanics. New muscles that are still adapting to the body's natural movements alter everything. How long your stride is, how your hips are positioned, and the exact angles where your knees and ankles absorb the impact of the floor. Even a highly practiced movement like a shooting form can change when the supporting muscle groups are shaped differently than they have ever been before. The natural movements Clark had used her whole life, the very skills that made her the clear #1 draft pick, were being slightly thrown off by a body that was physically stronger but going through a mechanical transition. Right at that moment, the intense WNBA schedule began. There is no easy transition period in professional women's basketball, and rookies do not get time to let their bodies find a rhythm. The schedule hits them like a wall, featuring consecutive games across multiple time zones. This grueling travel would be difficult for an experienced veteran, but it was combined with an unprecedented amount of media interviews and corporate events that were required specifically because she is Caitlin Clark. While her teammates were taking advantage of whatever brief rest periods the schedule offered, Clark was balancing press tours, corporate sponsor duties, and national television appearances on top of an already exhausting physical workload. A biomechanics expert who trains professional track athletes described a scenario like Clark's very simply. If you alter the movement foundation of an elite athlete and then immediately force them into the highest level of competition without giving them time to adapt, you are basically running a high-performance engine on the completely wrong type of fuel. The engine does not quit right away. It keeps running, and it might even perform well for a short time, but the internal damage is happening beneath the surface. It builds up silently until the entire system can no longer handle the strain. That exact breakdown happened 4 times this year, yet the Fever management acted surprised every single time. There are certain moments in sports that become major turning points, not because of the final score, but because of what they reveal about the system surrounding the game. The matchup between the Fever and the Sun was one of those moments when Clark went down. It was not the actual physics of the injury that shocked people, because athletes get hurt all the time. Injury is a known part of professional sports, and anyone who watches games regularly understands that reality. What truly made people stop was the way she reacted. Caitlin Clark is a competitor who is so mentally focused that she had spent weeks playing through clear physical pain without letting a grimace show for more than a second, yet she walked off that floor looking like something inside her had truly broken, and it was deeper than just a groin injury. She was clearly hurting as she headed toward the bench. She leaned forward in that universal posture athletes use when they are trying to catch their breath through intense pain. Then, while sitting on the sideline, she started crying. These were real tears. They were not the emotional reactions players sometimes have during a stressful moment or a heated game. This was the kind of crying that happens when deep frustration, fear, physical pain, and pure emotional exhaustion all collide at once, leaving a person with nowhere left to hide it. Her body had been enduring far more than just a strained muscle. It had been carrying months of being told everything was fine when it clearly was not. She had spent months being sent back onto the court before her body could heal, enduring a relentless schedule that never paused long enough for real recovery to take place. And how did the Indiana Fever describe it to the public? They called it minor discomfort. Think about that choice of words for a second. We are talking about an athlete in visible tears, struggling to move naturally, and missing game time after suffering her 4th lower body injury in just 8 weeks. Despite all that, the organization chose to call it minor discomfort. There is a very specific reason they use that exact language. It controls public expectations without closing off any future options. It keeps corporate sponsors happy, avoids triggering any official league rules that might force her to sit out for a longer period, and keeps the main attraction on the basketball floor. The comparison that everyone immediately made was completely fair and justified. If a top 5 player in the NBA, someone like LeBron James or Stephen Curry, suffered 4 physical breakdowns in the first 2 months of their rookie year and sat on the bench in tears, the entire sports media world would come to a complete stop. There would be press conferences with medical specialists, detailed public recovery timelines, and tough questions about accountability aimed at the team and the league. The only topic anyone would talk about would be the player's long-term health. Instead, what Caitlin Clark received was a brief statement that read more like a daily weather forecast. This brings us to the detail that reveals everything about where this situation currently stands. Caitlin Clark is no longer depending exclusively on the medical staff provided by the Indiana Fever. This is not a rumor spreading around the internet. It has been verified by individuals who have direct knowledge of what is happening behind the scenes. She and her personal team have started putting together an independent group of medical specialists, outside professionals who have zero ties to the team and therefore have no corporate reason to minimize her injuries. This group includes biomechanical experts who specialize in correcting movement patterns for top-tier athletes, alongside regenerative medicine doctors whose work is normally connected to NBA stars and Olympic recovery programs. They have also brought in soft tissue rehabilitation specialists who view an injury not just as a spot to patch up quickly for the next game, but as a structural flaw that needs a real, permanent solution. The medical treatments they are reportedly looking into go far beyond the standard procedures offered by the Fever. They are exploring biomechanical retraining to find and fix the exact movement imbalances that triggered this entire string of injuries. They are also looking at stem cell therapy to speed up tissue healing within the injured muscle fibers, as well as sessions in hyperbaric oxygen chambers to lower inflammation and deliver healing oxygen directly to the damaged tissue at a cellular level. This is not just routine rehabilitation. It is a complete physical reset. It is an open admission that the methods used by the team so far have not only failed to fix her body, but have actually made the damage worse. When a star player of this level starts building her own medical support system completely outside of the franchise that employs her, it sends a clear message that cannot be taken back. Once trust breaks down to this degree, it cannot be fixed by a single good week of practice or a cheerful medical update. The Fever organization had every opportunity to handle this situation correctly. They could have brought in the finest medical resources available, made Clark's long-term physical health their absolute highest priority, and shared information honestly with both her and the basketball public. They chose not to do that. Now, the individual who is most critical to their franchise, most important to the WNBA, and most vital to the entire business of women's basketball has decided she needs people protecting her who are not also trying to manage a corporate brand. It is impossible to overstate how massive this shift really is. This is not just a medical choice. It is a direct statement of independence. To truly comprehend why the Fever handled the situation this way, you have to look at what Caitlin Clark represents to them, not as a basketball player, but as a financial asset. Her jersey sales have consistently been at the very top of the league since before she ever stepped onto a professional court. Her presence in the starting lineup has a clear, proven impact on ticket sales, television viewership, and arena crowds that goes way beyond anything the WNBA has ever experienced from a single athlete in its modern history. Corporate sponsors scheduled their entire marketing campaigns around her availability, and television networks built their broadcast packages around the guarantee that she would be on the floor. The entire financial engine of the Indiana Fever, and in many ways the WNBA itself, is set up around the requirement that Caitlin Clark is playing and performing at a level that creates media content, online discussion, and fan engagement. So, when her body begins showing signs that it desperately needs real time off, not just restricted minutes or positive press releases, the team leadership does not view it as a medical issue first. They view it as a corporate emergency. Every single game she sits out represents a stadium full of fans who bought tickets specifically to watch her play that night. Every week her play is restricted represents a corporate sponsorship event that loses its main attraction. Any medical update that suggests an issue more serious than a day-to-day injury creates a ripple effect through television contracts, merchandise sales projections, and the league's presentations to future investors regarding its financial growth. This is the corporate system that creates phrases like minor discomfort. It is not necessarily done out of malice, though negligence is certainly an accurate word for it. It is the automatic response of an organization that has allowed its business goals to become so deeply tied to a single athlete's body that truly prioritizing her health feels almost impossible without taking a major financial hit. Athletic trainers who would normally recommend a long break find themselves dealing with pressure from upper management. Coaches who want to limit her playing time to protect her must balance that desire against the demands of team owners and front office executives. Meanwhile, the public relations team filters every medical report to ensure the market can handle the news. As a result, Clark receives restricted playing time instead of true rest, empty assurances instead of realistic timelines, and a forced smile on media day instead of the actual truth. The fans who purchase the jerseys and fill up the arenas are continuously told that everything is perfectly fine. But things have not been fine at all. One of the most glaring and overlooked parts of this entire situation is how few prominent figures within the league have stepped forward publicly and firmly to demand that Caitlin Clark be properly protected. There are many veteran players in this league who spent their entire careers dealing with the exact same type of management failures that Clark is facing right now. These are women who played through severe injuries with poor medical resources, traveled under conditions that no male athlete in a major professional league would ever accept, and built the very foundation that allowed the WNBA to enjoy its current level of popularity. Those veterans have powerful voices, and their personal experience is incredibly relevant here. Yet, when it comes to openly calling out what is happening to Clark and insisting on better treatment, the response from the wider community of players has been incredibly quiet. There have been occasional supportive posts on social media and quiet expressions of worry, but there is no organized effort and no loud public stance. Part of the reason for this silence is quite complicated. Clark did not enter the WNBA the way a typical rookie does. She arrived as a massive cultural phenomenon. Before she ever played a minute of professional basketball, she had corporate endorsement deals that were larger than what many veteran players earn over their entire careers. She received a level of national media coverage that the vast majority of players in this league never see at any point in their lives. She brought a commercial presence that altered the financial reality of the sport almost overnight. While the large majority of her teammates and peers have handled this unique situation with total professionalism and real grace, the underlying tension cannot be ignored. There is a quiet friction between the athletes who built this league while working in relative obscurity and the rookie who arrived and instantly became its most famous face, its most profitable asset, and the focus of more media coverage than the rest of the league combined. Inside the Indiana locker room specifically, reports indicate that the environment has become highly complicated. Veteran players, who have every right to expect the franchise to focus on their personal development, salaries, and health, have watched the organization dedicate almost all of its resources and attention strictly to Clark. There are quiet complaints about player rotations, playing time, and the feeling that one individual's needs completely overshadow everyone else's. None of this is Clark's fault. She did not create the system, and she never asked to be the center of the universe around which everything else turns, but she is stuck right in the middle of it. Ironically, she is also the person who is being let down the most by this environment. The organization focused entirely on building up the team's public visibility around her without actually building a proper team structure, and now everyone is dealing with the fallout, especially Clark. There is an alternate version of this season that could have gone completely differently, and it is not just a fantasy. It is what qualified, player-first franchise management actually looks like. The exact moment Clark strained her left quadricep during the opening weeks of the season, the proper response was immediate and obvious. Sit her down completely. The choice should not have been game-time decisions, limited minutes, or watching her move during warm-ups hoping her body would get through it. It should have been a complete stop. She needed 2 to 3 weeks of total rest, combined with the immediate use of whatever specialized medical resources the organization could secure, no matter the financial cost or the impact on the game schedule. That initial injury should have been treated not as a minor annoyance to be managed, but as the start of a dangerous situation that could end very poorly if the issue was not completely resolved right away. The rehabilitation plan designed for that period would not just target the original strain, it would investigate exactly why the breakdown happened in the first place. It would look at which movement habits played a role, which muscle imbalances already existed, and what parts of her training workload and travel routine created the perfect storm for an injury. It would fix those structural issues before allowing her to return to highly competitive games. The coaching staff would change their game strategies to account for her absence, rather than rushing her back out to avoid making those adjustments. The public relations department would present the rest period as a sign of organizational discipline, proving they are a franchise dedicated to long-term success rather than quick wins. Sports fans respect that kind of approach, and it actually builds long-term trust instead of destroying it. What Indiana chose to do instead looks like a perfect example of how an organization should never handle the health of a franchise star. She was placed back on the court before her muscle tissue had completely healed. Her minute restrictions were enforced randomly and quietly thrown out whenever a close game required her to play more. Medical updates were carefully timed and phrased to keep the public calm rather than to provide total transparency. Television cameras would frequently catch coaches watching her flinch during a play, showing the exact same neutral expression they would use for a missed defensive assignment. A deliberate blankness that signaled above all else that the entertainment must continue at all costs. Clark's inner circle noticed every single bit of it. Her agent, her advisors, and the people from her Iowa network who understand her body and her style of play far better than any Fever employee has had time to learn have been watching closely. In response, they have been quietly setting up the parallel medical infrastructure mentioned earlier. This includes independent specialists, a separate rehabilitation crew, and a dedicated support network that operates with Clark's long-term career health as the only priority that matters. When this kind of division begins to form between a professional athlete and her team, it is more than just a warning sign. It is a countdown clock. And that clock has already been ticking for a while. Let us be entirely honest about a topic that league insiders, team executives, and sports business experts are already discussing behind closed doors using much sharper language than what is said in public. Caitlin Clark's position in Indiana is highly unstable, and this instability has a clear end date attached to it. Rookie deals in the WNBA do not last forever. When Clark eventually enters free agency, she will easily become the most heavily pursued player in the entire history of the league's open market. This will not just be because of her incredible skills on the court, but because of what her presence does for every business metric a team cares about. Every single franchise with salary cap space and a desire to win will be putting together a presentation to win her over. And that presentation will be very simple. It will boil down to a promise. Come to a place that will actually protect your body. The teams that are already being discussed most often in this scenario are no secret to anyone. The New York Liberty possess the media market, the modern facilities, and the organizational reputation of a franchise that consistently invests in building an actual championship contender rather than just trading for a superstar. The Las Vegas Aces have proven they have a player-first culture that wins championships and keeps star players happy because athletes trust that the team truly cares about their long-term health. These are not organizations frantically trying to clear out space. They are teams that knew this exact moment was on the horizon and have been quietly setting themselves up for it. Then there is the massive role played by Nike. Clark's endorsement deal with Nike is not just a minor detail in this situation. It is an incredibly powerful factor. Nike has invested millions of dollars into Clark's brand and has a massive financial interest in making sure her image is showcased in the biggest, most prominent media markets available. The belief that Nike's corporate discussions regarding Clark's future location have no impact on how this entire situation plays out is incredibly naive. Corporate sponsors with this level of financial investment do not sit quietly on the sidelines while team mismanagement threatens the star athlete they have built entire marketing campaigns around. If the Fever hope to keep her long-term, to truly retain her loyalty rather than just holding on to her unhappily through the end of her contract, they must do something they have failed to do up to this point. They must prove through real actions, rather than polished press releases, that Caitlin Clark's body and long-term health matter more to the team than any single game, any television broadcast, or any quarter of merchandise sales. They must build a protective structure around her instead of just building an entire business on top of her strength. And they are quickly running out of time to prove that message convincingly. Her departure, if it happens, will not be driven by emotion. Clark is not that kind of person. It will be a cold, logical decision made by an elite competitor who has identified the exact environment that will allow her to remain great for a long time, having realized that her current team is not that place. There is something fundamental that the WNBA's executive leadership seems to have completely misunderstood about this current era. The new fan base that Caitlin Clark brought into women's basketball, along with the incredibly dedicated fans who are already supporting the league, is not a passive audience that just accepts official statements and moves on. These are supporters who analyze injury reports the same way financial experts read corporate filings, and who follow sports medicine experts on social media specifically to decode what the medical terminology in those updates actually means. They break down game video frame by frame, looking for slight changes in her running form, moments where she favors one leg, or any split-second hesitation before a physical breakdown. There are entire online communities on Reddit and Twitter where detailed discussions about kinesiology happen at a level of depth that would shock the people writing the Fever's public medical updates. Every single time Clark hesitates on a hard cut, someone cuts the video clip. Every time she favors one leg coming off a screen, someone records the timestamp. Every time a coach's facial expression tells a different story than the official press release from earlier that day, someone is watching, saving, and sharing the proof online. You simply cannot control this audience the way sports franchises controlled fans in the past, back when news moved slowly and people lacked the tools to check the facts for themselves. Those tools are available right now. They are completely free, widely accessible, and the fans using them are incredibly passionate. The credibility gap that the Indiana Fever and the WNBA have created by constantly downplaying Clark's physical health is not just theoretical damage. It is a genuine, measurable breakdown of the basic trust that keeps this entire sports ecosystem working properly. Fans who feel lied to do not remain neutral. They turn hostile. They do not just stop believing the very next injury report. They begin assuming the worst about every single statement the team makes, both in the past and in the future. The online tags already spreading across social media, the ones calling for honesty, pointing out executive failures, and questioning if Clark is being run into the ground purely for financial profit, are not extreme views. They represent the mainstream perspective of a fan base reacting to a total collapse of institutional trust, an issue that the organization created itself and has so far shown zero real interest in fixing. The league had a perfect opportunity to get out ahead of this situation, using Clark's arrival as a chance to establish a new standard of player care, but instead chose a path that threatens the very asset they built their future upon.